I first noticed her when she vanished. In a world where everyone clamored for my attention, supermodels with mathematically perfect features, executives desperate for approval, socialites hungry for status by association, she was the only one trying to disappear. While emptying my trash bin, she moved like a shadow at dusk, her eyes never rising to meet mine, her body language a masterclass in invisibility. Alexander Monroe, the man Forbes called Manhattan's $18 billion enigma, a man who collected beautiful people as casually as others collected art, couldn't stop staring at the woman who wanted nothing more than to go unseen. Her name badge read Maya, and against all logic, she fascinated me. They called me the Ice King of Manhattan behind my back, the nickname I secretly cultivated. Cold calculation had transformed my father's failing textile factory into a global empire spanning technology, real estate, and entertainment. Emotion was inefficient, sentiment was a liability. This philosophy had served me well, earning me a fortune that allowed me to occupy the top 3 floors of Monroe Tower, my 60-story glass monument to success. That morning, I was reviewing arrangements for our annual Winter Gala, Monroe Enterprises' flagship charity event. Julian, my impeccably efficient assistant, announced through the intercom, "Mr. Monroe, the models have arrived for the pre-event briefing." "Send them in," I replied, closing my laptop with a soft click. They entered like exotic creatures from another realm, all legs and sharp angles, wrapped in designer clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I'd dated 3 of them in previous years. Each relationship had lasted exactly as long as it served a purpose: publicity, companionship during international travel, or simply because it was expected of someone in my position. As Julian began his rehearsed spiel about media protocols and schedule expectations, I found my attention wandering. I'd heard it all before, the same words, different faces. Instead, my gaze drifted to the far side of my expansive office suite. That's when I saw her. A woman I'd never noticed before was quietly emptying the trash bins, her movements efficient but somehow unobtrusive. She wore the grey uniform of our building's maintenance staff, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Unlike everyone else who entered my orbit, she didn't steal glances at me. Didn't try to be noticed. Didn't seem to care who I was at all. It was unsettling. "Who's that?" I asked Julian quietly when he finished his presentation. "Before I continue, please hit that subscribe button." He glanced over, confusion flickering across his face at my interest in someone so inconsequential. "New janitorial staff, I believe." Building management mentioned they were adjusting schedules. "Would you like me to have her come back later?" "No," I said, watching as she slipped out of the room, still without making eye contact with anyone. "It's fine." I returned my attention to the models, making appropriate small talk as cameras flashed for social media content. But for reasons I couldn't explain, my mind kept returning to the woman who had moved through my world like a ghost, unseen by everyone. Everyone except me. Over the next 2 weeks, I found myself increasingly aware of her presence. Her name was Maya Wilson. I discovered this after casually inquiring with building management, pretending I was concerned about security protocols. She worked the evening shift, cleaning executive offices after most employees had gone home. 28 years old. No disciplinary issues. Perfect attendance record. What was remarkable was how she moved through spaces as if trying to disappear within them. In a world where everyone performed for my attention, her determined invisibility was intriguing. "The Barcelona deal is stalling," my CFO announced during our executive meeting. "They're pushing for better terms." I nodded absently, watching through the glass wall as Maya quietly wiped down the surface of an empty desk in the outer office. "Let them wait. They'll come around when the quarter ends." "The model schedules for the gala are confirmed," Julian said later that afternoon, placing a folder on my desk. "Vogue wants an exclusive with you and Adriana before the event." "Fine," I replied, my eyes tracking Maya as she vacuumed the hallway outside. I'd surrounded myself with beauty my entire adult life, manufactured, perfected beauty that served as both armor and accessory. I collected beautiful things, beautiful people, beautiful moments that meant nothing beyond their surface value. But I couldn't stop watching Maya, who moved through my world without seeking anything from it. One evening, I deliberately stayed late, pretending to work while actually watching her through the reflection in my window. She entered my office silently, nodding respectfully when she saw me. "Good evening, Mr. Monroe. I can come back later if you prefer." Her voice was soft but clear, with a subtle accent I couldn't quite place, perhaps southern, but refined. "No need," I replied, turning to face her. "I don't mind the company." She looked startled, as if the concept of being company to someone like me was absurd. Perhaps it was. Our worlds couldn't be further apart. "I'll try to be quick," she said, moving efficiently around the office, emptying trash bins and wiping surfaces. "You're new," I said, stating the obvious. She nodded without looking up. 3 weeks now, sir." "Do you like it?" "Working here?" Her hands paused briefly before continuing their work. "It's a good job. Clean building, decent hours, fair pay." Something in her measured response suggested there was more she wasn't saying. I was used to people trying to impress me, exaggerating their enthusiasm. Her restraint was refreshing. "You're different from most people who come through this office," I said, not entirely sure why I was pursuing this conversation. This time she did look up, her dark eyes meeting mine directly for the first time. The impact was unexpectedly powerful. "I imagine we all seem the same from where you sit, Mr. Monroe." The quiet dignity in her voice caught me off guard. Before I could respond, my phone rang, Julian, calling about some crisis with the Barcelona deal. When I finished the call, Maya was gone, the office immaculate as if she'd never been there at all. Yet something had shifted. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely curious about another person. The night before the gala, everything went wrong. Julian was hospitalized with appendicitis. The Barcelona deal imploded spectacularly. And 3 of the models threatened to pull out after a rival company offered them better terms. I spent hours on damage control, my temper fraying with each new crisis. By midnight, I was alone in my office, tie loosened, hair disheveled, staring at financial projections that suggested the Barcelona disaster might trigger a significant stock drop. My head throbbed with tension. When the door opened quietly, I snapped, "Not now," without looking up. "I'm sorry, Mr. Monroe. I'll come back later." Maya's voice pulled me from my spiral of frustration. I looked up to see her already backing out of the doorway. "No, wait," I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. "I apologize. It's been a difficult day." She hesitated in the doorway, cleaning cart beside her. "Would you like me to bring you some water? Or coffee?" "Coffee would be." I started to say, then stopped myself. "Actually, no. That's not your job." She smiled slightly, the first time I'd seen her expression change. "It's no trouble. The break room is just down the hall." Before I could protest further, she disappeared. 10 minutes later, she returned with a cup of black coffee and, surprisingly, a sandwich. "You missed dinner," she explained, setting both on my desk. "The security guard mentioned you've been here since morning." I stared at the simple offerings, oddly touched by this small act of kindness that expected nothing in return. "Thank you." She nodded and moved to begin her usual cleaning routine, but I found myself unwilling to return to the spreadsheets and crisis management. "How did you know I'd take my coffee black?" I asked. She glanced up, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "I empty your trash, Mr. Monroe. 5 to 6 cups a day, no cream containers, no sugar packets." Observant, I noted, taking a sip. It was perfectly made. "It's easier to move through the world when you pay attention," she said quietly, wiping down a bookshelf. The statement hung between us. I'd built an empire by paying attention to markets, to opportunities, to weaknesses I could exploit. But I realized I rarely paid attention to people as individuals. "The gala is tomorrow," I said, for lack of anything better to say. "I know. Extra cleaning crews have been scheduled. I won't be here, it's my day off." "You should come," I said impulsively. She froze, looking at me as if I'd suggested she fly to the moon. "To the gala? Why not?" I was surprising myself now. Because I'm the cleaning staff, she said with simple directness. And those events aren't for people like me. What if I invited you as my guest? Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness. Why would you do that, Mr. Monroe? It was a fair question, one I wasn't entirely sure I could answer. Because you brought me coffee when you didn't have to. Because you noticed I missed dinner. Because? I hesitated, then finished honestly, because I'd like to see you somewhere besides emptying my trash. She studied me for a long moment, her eyes penetrating as if trying to read my true intentions. Then she shook her head slowly. I appreciate the offer, but I don't think that would be appropriate. I'm not propositioning you, I said quickly, realizing how my invitation might have sounded. I didn't think you were, she replied with unexpected dignity. But we both know I would be out of place there. The janitress at the Billionaire's gala? People would talk. Let them, I said, surprising myself with my own vehemence. Maya finished wiping the last shelf, then turned to face me fully. Mr. Monroe, in your world, talk is just gossip. In mine, it could cost me my job. Her words hit me like a splash of cold water. Of course she was right. I'd been thinking selfishly, not considering the position I might be putting her in. I understand, I said finally. I apologize for overstepping. She nodded, but before she could respond, the phone on my desk rang again, the crisis with the Barcelona deal escalating further. By the time I finished the call, Maya had gone, leaving behind only the coffee, the sandwich, and the lingering scent of lemon-scented cleaner. The winter gala was, by all objective measures, a triumph. Monroe Tower's grand ballroom glittered with celebrities, business titans, and fashion icons. The models were flawless in our exclusive designs, cameras flashed continuously, and social media buzzed with real-time coverage. I moved through it all on autopilot, shaking hands, making appropriate small talk, posing for photos with beautiful women draped on my arm. But my mind kept drifting to the one person who wasn't there. You seem distracted tonight, Alexander, purred Adriana, the Brazilian supermodel who was officially my date for the evening. Is something wrong with the Barcelona deal? I heard rumors. Everything's fine, I lied smoothly, guiding her toward the champagne fountain. Just thinking about the Children's Foundation. That's what tonight is really about, after all. She laughed, a practiced, musical sound. Always so serious about your charity work. It's one of your most attractive qualities. I smiled automatically, but found myself thinking of Maya's words, in your world, talk is just gossip. In mine, it could cost me my job. Had I ever truly considered how the other half of the world lived? The people who cleaned up after galas like this one ended? Midway through the evening, I excused myself from a conversation with potential investors and retreated to my private office for a moment of quiet. The night view of Manhattan spread before me, twinkling with a million lights, beautiful and distant. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Monroe. It was Maya's voice. I turned, startled to find her standing in my doorway. She wasn't in her usual grey uniform but instead wore a simple black dress, nothing fancy but elegant in its simplicity. Her hair was down, falling in soft curls around her shoulders. You came, I said, unable to keep the surprise from my voice. She smiled slightly, stepping into the office. Not as a guest. Building management asked if I could work an extra shift tonight. There was a spill in the women's restroom that needed immediate attention. I see, I said, inexplicably disappointed. I finished cleaning it up and was headed home when I saw the light in your office, she continued. I thought perhaps you'd left something on. I nodded, studying her. Even in her simple dress, without makeup or jewelry, she possessed a quiet beauty that seemed more authentic than anything downstairs. Are you enjoying your gala? She asked. It's going well, I replied automatically, then added more honestly, but no, I'm not enjoying it particularly. Why not? It looks beautiful from what I could see. I moved to the small bar in the corner of my office and poured 2 glasses of water, offering one to her. She accepted it with a nod of thanks. Beauty gets boring when it's everywhere, I said, surprising myself with my candor. When it's manufactured, cultivated, expected. That's an unusual perspective for someone who makes his living selling beauty and luxury, she observed. I smiled ruefully. Perhaps that's why I notice its absence. We stood in silence for a moment, the muffled sounds of the gala filtering up from below. I should go, she said finally. My bus comes in 20 minutes. Let me call you a car, I offered immediately. She shook her head. That's not necessary. It's late, and you worked an extra shift because of my event. Please, let me at least make sure you get home safely. She hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. I called my personal driver and instructed him to take Maya wherever she needed to go. As we walked toward the private elevator, we passed a group of models returning from a smoke break. They glanced at Maya with obvious curiosity and whispered among themselves after we passed. This is what I meant about people talking, Maya said quietly once we were alone in the elevator. Does it bother you? I asked. She considered this, then shook her head. No. But it might bother you tomorrow. Why would it bother me? The elevator doors opened to the private garage where my driver waited with a black Bentley. Because people like you have images to maintain, she said simply. Good night, Mr. Monroe. Thank you for the ride. Before I could respond, she had slipped into the car, which pulled away moments later, leaving me alone with her words echoing in my mind. Images to maintain. Was that all my life had become? A carefully cultivated facade of success, wealth, and emotional detachment. For the first time in years, I felt the uncomfortable sensation of being truly seen. The gala dominated business news for days afterward. Our stock rose 5 points. The model's social media posts generated millions of impressions. The Children's Foundation received record donations. By every metric that mattered to Monroe Enterprises, it had been a resounding success. But I found myself going through the motions, my mind constantly drifting to Maya. I'd given my driver explicit instructions to ensure her safety, and he reported that he'd taken her to a modest apartment building in Queens, waiting until she was safely inside before leaving. I hadn't seen her since. According to the cleaning schedule I'd discreetly obtained from building management, she wouldn't be assigned to my floor again until Thursday. The Barcelona investors are back at the table, Julian reported, recovered from his appendicitis and back at work. Your performance at the gala impressed them. They're willing to accept our original terms. Good, I replied absently, signing the documents he'd placed before me. Also, Adriana's agent called. She's interested in extending her contract as the face of our luxury line, with certain conditions. What conditions? Mainly that she be your exclusive escort for the Paris Fashion Week events next month. I looked up sharply. That's a personal request, not a professional one. Julian shifted uncomfortably. She feels the public perceives you as a couple after the gala, and that has value to our brand. Tell her agent we'll consider the contract extension based on its commercial merits only, I said coolly. My personal life isn't for negotiation. Julian nodded, making notes. One other thing, building management sent up a complaint form. Apparently some of the models reported inappropriate behavior from one of the cleaning staff during the gala. They're suggesting termination. My blood went cold. What cleaning staff? What behavior? He handed me the form. Someone named Maya Wilson. According to the complaint, she was in restricted areas during the event and was seen leaving your private office late in the evening. I stared at the paper, rage building slowly as I read the carefully worded accusations. Unprofessional conduct. Suspicious access to executive areas. Inappropriate interactions with VIP guests. This is ridiculous, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. She was working an extra shift. At management's request. Julian looked surprised. You know this employee? She cleans my office, I replied, standing abruptly. And she did nothing wrong. I want this complaint destroyed and the matter dropped immediately. Of course, Julian said, watching me with newfound curiosity. I'll take care of it. And find out when she's working next. I want to speak with her. After Julian left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city below. The complaint form had rattled me more than I cared to admit. Maya had been right, people had talked, and their talk threatened her livelihood. All because I'd sent her home in my car after she worked late cleaning up my guests' messes. The injustice of it burned in my throat. Thursday arrived, and with it, Maya. I deliberately stayed late, waiting until the office had emptied before approaching her as she cleaned the conference room. "Mr. Monroe," she said, clearly surprised to see me. "You're working late again." "I wanted to speak with you," I said. "There was an incident after the gala." "A complaint?" Her face fell, and she set down her cleaning cloth. "I see. You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," she said quietly. "One of the security guards warned me yesterday that some of the models had complained about me being near your office that night." "The complaint has been dismissed," I assured her. "I made it clear you were working at management's request and did nothing inappropriate." She nodded, relief visible in her eyes. "Thank you. I need this job." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You're obviously intelligent, observant. You could do more than this." Something flashed across her face, a momentary hardness that I hadn't seen before. "Because life doesn't offer the same opportunities to everyone, Mr. Monroe. I'm working this job to pay for night classes in accounting. This building is safe, the hours work with my school schedule, and until now, no one paid enough attention to me to cause problems." I felt properly chastised. "I apologize for creating difficulties for you." "You didn't create them," she said, surprising me with her directness. "The world did. The same world that makes it easy for you and difficult for me." Her honesty was like a splash of cold water. No one in my orbit spoke to me this way, with complete disregard for my wealth, power, or position. "Have dinner with me," I said impulsively. She looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Why?" "Because I want to know more about your world," I answered honestly. "Because you're the only person I've met in years who doesn't want something from me." "Everyone wants something," she countered, returning to her cleaning. "I want to finish my degree. I want a better life. I want to not worry about paying rent." "That's not what I meant." She stopped again, looking at me directly. "I know what you meant. And the answer is no. Having dinner with you would only create more problems for me. More talk. More complaints. More risk to my job and my reputation. What if we went somewhere no one would recognize either of us?" I pressed. "No fancy restaurant, no photographers, no expectations." Maya studied me for a long moment. "Why is this so important to you, Mr. Monroe?" I couldn't answer immediately because I wasn't entirely sure myself. "Finally," I said, "because for the first time in years, I'm interested in something real." She continued to look at me, searching my face for sincerity. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her, because she finally sighed and said, "There's a diner near my apartment in Queens. Maria's. It's open late, the food is decent, and no one who goes there would care who you are. Tomorrow night," I suggested, trying not to sound too eager. "I have class until 9:30, she said. "I could meet you there at 10. "I'll be there," I promised, feeling an unexpected surge of anticipation. As I walked away, I realized with startling clarity that I was more excited about a late dinner at a Queen's diner than I had been about the multi-million-dollar gala that had consumed months of planning. Something was happening to me, and I wasn't sure if I should be concerned or relieved. Maria's diner was nothing like the establishments I frequented. Fluorescent lighting, vinyl booths, laminated menus sticky with years of use. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a kind smile, didn't recognize me or care who I was, a novel experience in itself. Maya arrived at 10:15, looking exhausted but determined, her backpack heavy with textbooks. She slid into the booth across from me, ordering coffee without looking at the menu. "You actually came," she said, a note of surprise in her voice. I said I would. I felt oddly defensive, as if I needed to prove my reliability to her. She studied me across the table. I dressed down deliberately, jeans, a simple sweater, no watch or visible signs of wealth. But Maya smiled slightly and shook her head. "You still look like a billionaire, Mr. Monroe." It's in how you sit, how you watch everyone. Like you're calculating their value. The observation stung, particularly because I suspected it was accurate. Please call me Alexander, I said instead of addressing her point. Mr. Monroe makes this feel like a business meeting. Does Alexander have any friends? She asked unexpectedly. Real ones, not business associates or people who want your money or influence. I blinked, caught off guard by the directness of her question. I have people I trust, I said carefully. That's not the same thing, she noted, thanking the waitress as she set down the coffee. Do you? I countered. Her friends. She smiled, and it transformed her face, softening the wariness I usually saw there. Yes. Not many, but good ones. My roommate Deja from nursing school. My study group. The other cleaning staff on my shift. What do you talk about with them? I was genuinely curious. Life. Dreams. Struggles. The ridiculous things we see at work. She sipped her coffee. I tell them about the bizarre food combinations I find in executives' trash cans. Deja tells us about the patients who try to escape the hospital in their gowns. I found myself smiling at her easy descriptions of friendship, something that had become foreign to me over the years of increasing wealth and isolation. What about family? I asked. Her expression shuttered slightly. My mother died 3 years ago. Cancer. My father left when I was young. I have a brother in the military, stationed overseas. I'm sorry about your mother, I said sincerely. She nodded acknowledgement. What about you? Family. Parents divorced when I was 12. Father remarried 3 times. Mother lives in Europe now, with her art collection and 3rd husband. No siblings. The facts of my family history, stripped of emotion. That sounds lonely, she said simply. No one had ever described my life that way to my face. Enviable, successful, powerful, these were the adjectives people used. Never lonely. It's efficient, I replied, my standard defense. Maya laughed, a genuine sound that caught me by surprise. Is that how you see everything? In terms of efficiency? Isn't that rational? I countered, feeling strangely defensive. It's one approach, she conceded. But not the only valid one. The waitress returned, and Maya ordered a grilled cheese sandwich. I asked for the same, earning a raised eyebrow from her. I would have expected you to ask if they have anything not on the menu, she teased. I'm not actually that person, I said, feeling the need to defend myself. No? She tilted her head. Then who are you, Alexander Monroe? The question hung between us, deceptively simple yet profoundly difficult to answer. Who was I, stripped of wealth and status? I wasn't entirely sure anymore. I used to know, I admitted finally. Now I'm less certain. She nodded as if this made perfect sense. That happens sometimes. Life has a way of making us question our own narratives. Our sandwiches arrived, and we ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten something so simple, or when food had tasted so good. Tell me about your classes, I said. Accounting, you mentioned. Her face lit up as she described her studies, her plans to become a CPA, her dream of eventually starting a financial literacy program for low-income communities. The passion in her voice was captivating. This wasn't the rehearsed enthusiasm of people pitching me business ideas, this was genuine drive born of lived experience. Why financial literacy specifically? I asked. Because it's the knowledge gap that keeps many communities in poverty, she explained. I grew up watching smart, hard-working people make terrible financial decisions because no one had ever taught them otherwise. My mother was brilliant, she could solve complex problems, manage a household on almost nothing, but she didn't understand interest rates or credit scores. That knowledge could have changed our lives. I nodded, seeing the issue through her eyes perhaps for the first time. My foundation donated millions to education, but we focused on technology, coding, entrepreneurship, not the basic financial knowledge that might have more immediate impact. You could do a lot of good with that perspective, I said. That's the plan, she replied, determination evident in her voice. As we finished our meal, the conversation flowed more easily than I could have imagined. Maya asked thoughtful questions about my business, not from the perspective of someone impressed by wealth, but from someone genuinely curious about how systems worked. I found myself explaining complex financial strategies and watching her quickly grasp concepts that many of my MBA-educated executives struggled with. When the check came, she reached for it immediately. "Please let me," I said, putting my hand over hers. She hesitated. "This isn't a date, Alexander." "I know," I assured her. "Consider it payment for the most honest conversation I've had in years." She relented with a small smile. "Next time, it's my treat." Next time. The words lingered between us, full of possibility. Outside the diner, my driver waited discreetly in an unmarked car, the only concession I'd made to my usual lifestyle. "Can I give you a ride home?" I offered. She shook her head. "My apartment is 2 blocks away." "I'll walk." "Then I'll walk with you," I said, signaling my driver to wait. We strolled through her neighborhood, a world away from my Manhattan penthouse. People sat on stoops despite the late hour, music drifted from open windows, and the streets pulsed with a life that felt more authentic than the sterile luxury I was accustomed to. "This is me," she said, stopping in front of a well-maintained but modest apartment building. I found myself reluctant to say goodbye. "Thank you for tonight, Maya." It was enlightening. "Was it what you expected?" she asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. "No," I admitted. "It was better." She smiled, the wariness in her eyes finally giving way to something warmer. "Good night, Alexander." As I watched her disappear into her building, I felt something shift inside me, a crack in the carefully constructed armor I'd built around myself over years of protecting my wealth and position. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I'd been simply a man having dinner with a fascinating woman, not a billionaire performing the role expected of him. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. For 3 weeks, we established a pattern. Twice weekly, after her night classes, I would meet Maya at Maria's diner. Each time, the conversation flowed more easily, the connection between us deepening despite, or perhaps because of, our different worlds. I found myself thinking about her constantly, rearranging my schedule to accommodate our late dinners, looking forward to them with an anticipation that both puzzled and energized me. "You seem different lately," Julian observed one morning as he delivered my daily briefing. "More engaged." "Do I?" I replied non-committally, though I knew he was right. "The executive team has noticed. They are pleased. The Barcelona deal is back on track, and your personal involvement seems to have made the difference." I nodded, accepting the compliment without explanation. My newfound energy and focus were directly related to my conversations with Maya, though not in ways anyone at Monroe Enterprises would understand. Her perspective challenged me. Her questions made me reconsider business practices I'd taken for granted. Her integrity inspired me to look beyond quarterly profits to the actual impact of my decisions. What had begun as curiosity had evolved into something I couldn't, or wouldn't, name. Then came the photographic evidence that shattered our careful equilibrium. "Mr. Monroe, we have a situation," Julian said, entering my office with uncharacteristic urgency. He placed a tablet on my desk, displaying a gossip website with the headline, "Ice King Thaws? Billionaire Alexander Monroe's Secret Late-Night Rendezvous." Below were grainy but recognizable photos of Maya and me outside Maria's diner, walking together on the street, sitting across from each other in conversation. The article speculated wildly about my mysterious new love interest and her humble origins. My stomach twisted with dread. This was exactly what Maya had feared, public exposure that could threaten her job, her privacy, her reputation. "How bad is this?" I asked Julian. "It's spreading," he admitted. "The major outlets haven't picked it up yet, but social media is active. Adriana's agent called, quite upset about the apparent violation of your exclusivity agreement." "We have no such agreement," I said sharply. "Not officially, but there were expectations." Julian trailed off at my expression. "The PR team is preparing a statement." They recommend identifying her as a potential scholarship recipient for the foundation, explaining your meetings as philanthropic mentorship. The suggestion made me physically ill. To reduce Maya to a charity case, to frame our connection as noblesse oblige rather than the genuine relationship it had become, I couldn't do it. No statements, I said firmly. This is my private life. It's not open for public discussion or corporate management. Julian looked concerned. Alexander, with respect, your private life affects company valuation. The board will want. The board will have to accept that I'm entitled to have dinner with whomever I choose, I interrupted. Now please give me the room. I need to make a call. After Julian left, I tried Maya's cell phone repeatedly. No answer. With growing anxiety, I called building management, only to discover she hadn't reported for her shift. Her supervisor mentioned she had called in sick, something she had never done before. By evening, I was frantic enough to do something I'd never considered. I went to Queens, to her apartment building, without calling ahead. The woman who answered Maya's door wasn't Maya. Tall, with brightly colored braids and scrubs that suggested she was just home from a hospital shift, she regarded me with open hostility. You must be Deja, I said, recognizing the name of Maya's roommate. I need to speak with Maya. She doesn't want to see you, Deja replied flatly. And I don't blame her. Please, I said, the word unfamiliar in my mouth. I need to make sure she's all right. All right. Deja's voice rose. Her face is all over the internet. People at her job are talking. She got messages from reporters asking about her relationship with you. How exactly would she be all right? I flinched at the justified anger in her voice. I never intended. Of course you didn't, she cut me off. Men like you never do. You live in a bubble where your actions don't have consequences, or if they do, your money makes them disappear. But Maya can't make this disappear. This could cost her everything she's worked for. Each word hit like a physical blow, because I knew she was right. Can you at least give her a message? I asked, my voice uncharacteristically humble. Deja hesitated, then sighed. What's the message? Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'll fix this, whatever it takes. And tell her. I paused, struggling to articulate feelings I'd never allowed myself to acknowledge. Tell her she matters to me. Not as an employee or a charity case or a novelty. She matters to me as herself. Deja studied my face, her expression softening slightly. I'll tell her. But I can't promise it will make a difference. Thank you, I said, turning to leave. Mr. Monroe, she called after me. I turned back. Maya is the best person I know. The most genuine, the most determined. If you hurt her, your money won't protect you from me. I nodded, accepting the warning as my due. I believe you. On the drive back to Manhattan, I made the most difficult decision of my professional life. By morning, I had set it in motion. 3 days passed without word from Maya. 3 days during which I executed the plan I'd formulated that night in the car. On the 4th day, I stood before the assembled executive team and board of directors of Monroe Enterprises, Julian at my side looking simultaneously concerned and impressed. The restructuring is complete, I announced. The papers have been filed. The press release goes out at noon. This is unprecedented, Gerald Foster, the longest-serving board member, protested. The shareholders will revolt. The shareholders will adapt, I replied calmly. Or they can sell. I retain controlling interest either way. What I had done was radical by any standard. I had restructured Monroe Enterprises, splitting it into 2 distinct entities. The first would continue as the profit-generating corporation the world knew. The second, newly formed and more substantial, was now the Monroe Foundation, endowed with 60% of my personal wealth. Its mission, financial literacy, economic justice, and educational access for underserved communities. Its first initiative, a nationwide program providing accounting education and certification for low-income students, complete with living stipends, childcare support, and guaranteed job placement. The market has already responded, Julian noted, displaying the real-time stock ticker on the conference room screen. Down 12 points since the rumors began. It will recover, I said confidently. And if it doesn't, we'll build something better. The meeting dissolved into heated debate, but I was no longer listening. My phone had vibrated with a text message from an unknown number, Maria's. 10 p.m. I arrived early, sliding into our usual booth. The waitress brought coffee without being asked, giving me a knowing smile that suggested she'd been following the news. At precisely 10 p.m., the door opened, and Maya walked in. She looked tired but resolute, her eyes meeting mine directly as she approached. "You came," I said, echoing her words from our first dinner. I said I would. She sat across from me, her expression unreadable. "You've been busy. You saw the announcement." She nodded. "It's all over the news. Billionaire gives away fortune, cites moral awakening." I grimaced. The headline writers took liberties. I didn't give away my fortune. I redirected it to financial literacy programs, she noted. Specifically accounting education for low-income students. It seemed like a worthy cause, I said carefully. One I recently came to understand the importance of. Maya studied me, her dark eyes searching my face. "Did you do this for me?" "No," I answered honestly. "I did it because of you. Because you made me see what I'd been blind to. But I did it for all the people like you who deserve the opportunity to change their circumstances." She was quiet for a long moment, processing my words. "And the other changes? Stepping down as CEO? Restructuring the company?" "I can't be the person I was anymore," I admitted. The Ice King served his purpose, building an empire. But that empire needs to serve a greater purpose now. "And what about us?" she asked, the question hanging between us. "That depends," I said, suddenly uncertain. "On what you want. On whether I've ruined everything with my carelessness." Maya took a deep breath. "I lost my job. Building management decided I was a distraction." "I'm sorry," I said, genuine remorse flooding me. "I can make calls." "No," she interrupted firmly. "No more fixing things with your power or money. Not for me." I nodded, accepting her boundary. "What will you do?" "I've been offered a scholarship," she said, a small smile playing at her lips. "From the New Monroe Foundation. Apparently, I fit their target demographic perfectly." Despite everything, I found myself smiling too. "That's a remarkable coincidence. Isn't it?" Her smile widened, and I saw in it the forgiveness I'd been hoping for. Full scholarship, living stipend, guaranteed internship. I'd be a fool not to accept. "The foundation would be lucky to have you," I said softly. "As would its founder." Maya reached across the table, taking my hand in hers, the first time she had initiated physical contact between us. "The man I've come to know these past weeks is not the cold billionaire from the magazine covers. He's someone who listens, who learns, who changes. That's the man I'm interested in knowing better." "Even with the complications?" I asked. "The publicity, the scrutiny, the differences in our worlds." "Our worlds aren't as different as they seemed," she said thoughtfully. "We both want purpose. We both value authenticity. We both recognize that wealth, real wealth, isn't measured in bank accounts." The waitress approached with menus, but Maya waved her off. "Not tonight, Maria. We're going somewhere new." She stood, still holding my hand, and pulled me gently to my feet. "Where are we going?" I asked, following her lead for perhaps the first time in my adult life. Maya smiled, open, warm, full of possibility. "That depends. How do you feel about small community theaters? My friends play opens tonight." As we stepped out into the Queen's night, I felt the last of the ice around my heart melt away, replaced by something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in decades, hope. "I feel," I said, squeezing her hand, "like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." They called me the Ice King of Manhattan. But Maya Wilson saw the man beneath the frost, and in doing so, changed not only my world but countless others. Sometimes, it takes the quiet wisdom of someone society overlooks to show us who we truly are, and who we might become.